Hello, and welcome to Loaves to Legends, your new favourite history podcast brought to you by the Sandwich Guildhall Museum. I'm your host, Gia, and I'm here with the rest of our lovely Loaves to Legends team to entertain, educate, and indulge you in all things big and small related to our gorgeous town of Sandwich. Shortly, I'll be joined by our second host of today, Bertie, to give you today's episode. But before we get into that, I want to encourage all of you wonderful people to not just listen, but to get involved too. One of the things that we want to emphasize here at our Loaves to Legend podcast is that this podcast is yours as much as it is ours. We have a wonderful online community, and you can chat to other history-loving fans on our Discord, or you can email us any facts or feedback at loavestolegends@gmail.com. The link to both Discord and the email are in the episode description. So let's get into this. I am joined today by our guest host, who is a collections volunteer at the Sandwich Guildhall Museum. Hello, Bertie.
Hi, Gia.
So Bertie is here. We work together most Sundays, and he works in the archives section of our museum as we are putting in our inventory onto spreadsheets. Sounds boring, but I actually think it's quite fun. Do you think it's boring, or do you quite enjoy it?
I actually quite enjoy it. Like, some days you find stuff which is like land agreements, so it's a bit dull, but most time I enjoy it.
Yep, we are nerds at the museum after all, hence the podcast. Right, okay, so I am very excited about today's episode. Bertie does not know what today's episode is about, so he'll be reacting alongside with you listeners. So we get a bit more organic response here in this podcast. We have so much in our collection store, so many individual books or small objects, that we don't have the space to display them all in our museum. But we know that as us collection volunteers, we know just how interesting these individual objects or documents can be. As we work in the collection store, going through the museum's entire inventory, we have come across so many fragments of history that make us laugh, gasp, or want to excitedly show others. Loaves to Legends is where we get to do that. And that is one of the huge reasons why we made this podcast. And I know we've said this multiple times before, but I just want to emphasize this. I was in the collection store one day and came across this book from 1814 on one particular court trial that happened in the general sessions within our very own courtroom. It contained the entire transcript for a criminal court case. And as I read through it, I was gripped by the story. I felt I was sitting in the gallery of the courtroom, listening to all these witnesses and forming my own opinions as either a visitor or maybe even a member of the gallery or a member of the jury, which at this time wouldn't actually have been possible because I'm neither a landowner or a man. But nonetheless, I liked the story and I knew this had to be shared with the public. So here we are. Are you ready to get into this?
Yes, I am. I'm actually really interested in this one.
Right, so on Friday the 15th of April in the year of 1814, over 200 years in the past, Major William Gordon of the 2nd Dragoon Guards pled not guilty to the murder of a private in his own regiment, Private George Gregory. Called to the general sessions in our very own courtroom, the Guildhall Courtroom in Sandwich, Kent, Major Gordon was charged with murdering Private Gregory on the 28th of March of the same year at the barracks in Ramsgate, Kent, by striking and stabbing him with a sword. According to the records, which are held in our collection store here at the Guildhall Museum, there's, quote, strike, stab and penetrate from Major Gordon caused the instant death of Private Gregory. Today, we will be telling you the story of this trial. I'll be giving you the details straight from the transcript of the whole court session, and Bertie and I will be discussing our thoughts, feelings, and questions, taking you guys along with us. Just imagine that we are all sitting in the gallery of the courtroom. Maybe this Loaves to Legends episode is actually just Bertie and I sitting in front of you, whispering and gossiping throughout the trial.
No, so I find this really interesting because we're in the room where the courtroom is. It's just downstairs from us. And because you've seen it before, you can really imagine yourself in that area. And also having something that's happened so close to us inside Sandwich, you can really paint a picture of what would be happening throughout the time at the time. You can imagine the gossip going on.
Exactly. I feel like we can picture the ghosts in front of these people, right, as we're talking about this.
Yeah, it's also just really interesting hearing these stories because, especially because of Sandwich being such an old town, like all these buildings have seen what's happened, and you can really imagine the scene that was set.
Right, okay. First things first, who are these people that we're talking about? Well, Major William Gordon, born in 1776, was at the time of the trial a major in the 2nd Dragoon Guards. When researching this episode, I couldn't find much about him, but I could find his birth, I could find that he retired in 1824, and apparently he drowned in a shipwreck in 1831. Unfortunately, there are quite a few men of his name, so it was quite difficult to research exactly and make sure I am finding out about the Major William Gordon that we are discussing in today's trial. Our other main character is Private George Gregory. Now, in the same boat, we don't know a lot, or we know even less about Private George Gregory. It is likely to do with the fact that, compared to Major William Gordon, George Gregory was a private, therefore his rank was lower. And I find that this issue of his rank being much lower than William Gordon's does come up potentially in the trial. It's not mentioned in the trial, but kind of like the subtext. Major William Gordon is potentially respected a bit more because of his higher rank. Going into this trial, we don't know much about these characters. However, we do find out about their behaviour from the witnesses. Right. Now that we know at least the names of these characters, I think it's good if we were to describe the scene in which this trial is happening. So, Bertie, if you were to describe and paint a picture of the courtroom for our listeners, for those who haven't been to our museum, that you should absolutely come and see it, how would you describe the courtroom?
So it's set up quite similarly to how you'd imagine a courtroom from one of those TV programs. But imagine that, but with all the wood being black and it all just being quite old. Because how old's the courtroom exactly?
So the courtroom was built in 1579. It is quick maths, over 400 years old. So it's old. It's very old, but it's so well kept, the courtroom itself, and it was used until 1987. Today it's used as part of our museum and to hire weddings.
Also, I think it'd be good to imagine there are pictures of monarchs on the wall, so you could sort of imagine like while you're talking about what happened, you sort of have a feeling that you're permanently being watched by someone higher up than you, and that alongside the judge being there as well.
You've got Charles II and Catherine of Braganza and James II, but as when he was Duke of York, staring down at you on trial along with the judge and jury. That is quite a bit of pressure. I didn't think about that. It's a good point there. Right, okay, so I think it's time that we get and set ourselves into this trial now. So, Bertie, you ready? Are you sat comfortably in your gallery chair? Listeners, are you sat comfortably in the gallery behind the bars that are protecting you from the scary accused? You ready for this, Bertie?
It's all quite exciting. Let's go.
Major William Gordon is being charged with the crime of murder. He has said that he had strike, stab, and penetrate George Gregory with a sword, and that Gregory instantly died. Major Gordon has pled not guilty. The trial starts with our first 4 witnesses from the prosecution. In this trial, we have about 34 witnesses. It's a long trial. A lot of people are speaking, but a lot of people say the same thing. So I've clumped these 4 first witnesses together because I think they give a good general sense of what happened, or at least from their perspective, what happened. So the story goes, according to these first 4 witnesses, Private George Gregory rode up to Major Gordon on horseback at the Ramsgate Barracks. So Major Gordon was standing as Gregory rode up to him on horseback. Major Gordon claimed that Private Gregory was drunk. He stopped Private Gregory, told him he can't go on any further. Private Gregory then denied that he was drunk. Gordon then kicked Gregory's horse and told him to go on. However, because he had been accused of being drunk, Private Gregory remained, and he stayed. He refused to go any further. William takes the sword that Gregory has on his person and hits the horse a few times. Gregory still refuses to move on. William then points the sword at Gregory. At this point, we don't know how, but the sword goes into Gregory's side and it kills him instantly. The horse rides off with Gregory's body limp, still on it, and William runs after the horse. Does that make sense? Can you picture the scene?
It is rather vivid, and it paints a very curious picture to the events that lead up to this and also directly after. Because for the case of William, this would be something hugely major for his power, because it really paints a really large question over what's going to happen.
Exactly. And I find it's the part that we don't know, from pointing the sword at Gregory to the sword and then killing him. That's exactly what we need to work out, whether that was murder or what happened. If it's by accident, what happened. So for people who don't know, pointing a sword, a major to point a sword at a private, was something that happened. It was a standard action to do. And in fact, one of the witnesses, Henry Chapman, claimed that pointing was an act of authority. It was in his right to do it. It was normal. Along with claiming it's an act of authority, this witness, Henry Chapman, goes on to say that he believes that William did not intend to stab. The exact quote and what he thought caused the death was that the effect of obstinacy in the man, an accident, the man being on the move and leaning to the left. So, Bertie, this witness here claims that Gregory was leaning towards the sword when William was pointing it at him, and there was a movement of some sort, not to do with William, that caused Gregory to then go into the sword. So the man fell into the sword, is what he's saying here.
That paints a really interesting picture on top of what we already know, because you'd think that for a raising motion of authority, he'd sort of be lifting the sword up from his side.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
It's like basic health and safety in a sense. But
yeah,
it's just really curious because it moves the actual thing that's being looked into here. Because most time people deny being there at all or doing it. But this is a trial of intent, which I think it's so difficult to prove. It really it could make this really interesting.
Yeah, very well said. To add more context to this, the third witness, William Gardner, comments on how Major William was immediately after the event. His quote was that William was in very great torment of his mind. It was said that William was in a passion, and this phrase is used quite often during this trial. A lot of the witnesses describe that William was in a passion. He was passionate when speaking to Gregory. However, this was also noted in the trial that this is standard behavior when a private is drunk and they are disobeying to move forward. A lot of witnesses, along with William Gardner, do claim that immediately after when Gregory was stabbed, William was distraught. He ran after him and was blaming himself. He immediately goes and tells on himself to a figure above him. So, I've got some questions for you, Bertie. Just from hearing the story, from the first four witnesses, do you think Major William Gordon intentionally stabbed Private George Gregory?
I think it's impossible to know for sure, especially because he's described as being very distraught after he's found out that he's killed someone. But that again is not absolute proof, because he might have intentionally stabbed him in a moment of anger because his authority was being questioned, and then immediately regretted it. That still makes him guilty because he intended to stab, but then also it could have just been him showing his authority and accidentally stabbing. The question of intent is always very difficult to prove.
That's a very good point. Now, I am going to present to you a contradictory witness statement. The fifth witness to come is John Halford. Now, he throws in a statement which stands out in the trial. It's very different from what so many other people say. In fact, he comes up again a little bit later, and we get to question whether he has good credibility or not. So, John Halford says that he saw Major Gordon stop the horse himself by holding onto its bridles. He's saying that he wasn't sure if the horse moved And this is the question of when William was pointing the sword at Gregory, did the horse move? And it was a horse movement that caused Gregory to go into the sword. This witness is saying he didn't know if the horse moved or not. He can't remember, but if he did, it's because William moved the horse. William was asking Gregory to move on, and Gregory was refusing. But this witness says that William was actually holding onto the reins and stopping Gregory from going on himself, and that he moved the horse, and he is the reason why the horse caused Gregory to go onto the sword. However, this is where a bit of drama happens in the trial, and there is audible gasps from the gallery at this moment, which was quite fun to read in the court transcript, by the way. The recorder mentioned how the audience reacted to this. The defense, upon cross-examination, claimed John Halford had been seen or heard going into a shop of another one of the jurors prior to the trial and said, quote, "I will do everything I can to hang him." This was, when I read this, my mouth was open and went, oh, drama. He's going to intentionally try and get Major William Gordon to be guilty. I think is a very interesting cross-examination to read when the defense pulls this up and how John reacts. So we have this contradictory witness statement, but we have a potential intent behind it. Any thoughts on this?
I think this is, again, really interesting because it adds a whole new layer. Because pointing the blame at a witness, intentionally, like maybe lying to get the major hung, is very interesting. Because I think, again, it'd be worth bringing up class into this and the fact that he's a major. And especially at this time, you would not become a major through hard work in the military. It was a role you were more born into because of your social standing. And I think it could be interesting to bring up the idea that maybe there was anger between classes, because if it is true that John Halford had said, "I will do everything I can to hang him," there's obviously anger and intent behind this. This would not be unfounded.
Something had to happen. There's some drama between him. Okay, drama sounds like there's some drama reacts channel at the moment, but I mean, there's something that happened between him and William, maybe. And you're right. If he's a major, maybe William disciplined him in a way he disagreed with. So unfortunately, we don't actually have that information, but that would have been excellent to find out. And you're right there. That would change how we view John Halford's perspective here. Right, as we go on for the trial, there are more prosecution witnesses. And it's interesting to point out that most of these witnesses say the same thing as the first four. There are no other witnesses that go along with John Halford. All of them go, William Gordon was an excellent major. He was passionate when speaking to Private Gregory, that he followed the horse in distress, knowing what he had done, but that he had not held onto the horse. It was Private Gregory that stopped and wouldn't move forward. And William pointed the sword to Gregory, and it was the horse that moved, or Gregory moved into the sword. It's interesting here to point out there are two doctors during this trial. Now, besides the doctors, it was agreed at the beginning of the trial that all other witnesses were not to hear any of the other witnesses' accounts. Therefore, all witnesses are unaware of what previous witnesses said before them. Now, this brings the fact that all witnesses are basically saying the same story. I think that gives so much credit to that then. If you're not hearing, I'm just repeating what this guy said, where we have the issue of ranks and thinking, you're speaking against the major in this trial if you're speaking against him, and if you are the only person speaking against him, that puts a lot of light on you. And I think that would, especially if you were a private, and there were quite a lot of these witnesses were fellow privates of lower ranks in the army, the fact that they don't know what was previously said, maybe that gives them, I think it makes the story more credible.
Yeah, no, I think that made sense. If you're about to pretty much discredit someone who's so much higher than you and accuse them of something like that, I think you would want to know that other people were also saying that, because if it was just you and then he got out with minimal charges, you could worry that would really discredit you in your future.
It's true. So actually, there's also a sense of the fact that you don't know what the other witnesses say could make you less willing, on the other hand, to say anything bad. So I like this perspective. Out of all these witnesses that speak for the prosecution, the one I want to highlight is from Captain William Bush. Now, he is a man of high rank in the army, just like Major Gordon. So whereas most of these other witnesses are either shopkeepers in the Ramsgate barracks or other privates that saw the events take place, this man is equal to Major Gordon. Captain William Bush had known Major Gordon, or William, for over 6 years, and Captain Bush was with William at the incident. He was next to him just before the incident took place and during it. So he has, at the moment, the best viewpoint of the crime. During his statement, Captain Bush was very clear that the horse moved and that this was the course of William's sword going into Gregory's body. Captain Bush also points out that William had pointed it, as he should, at Gregory. And the quote here, he says, is the prisoner's horse moved very sharply round and brought the man close upon the point of the sword. During his statement, Captain Bush brought forward a new defense argument as well. That, unknown to Major Gordon, the sword used to point at Private Gregory was sharper than swords usually were. According to Captain Bush, a normal sword would not have been sharp enough to pierce through a soldier's uniform. The sword that had been used was ground for foreign service, meaning that it had just been sharpened the day prior to a degree that is not meant to be used yet in service. In addition to this, Bush claims that if Major Gordon had intended to strike or stab Private Gregory, he would not have done such at the angle that he was at. A soldier trained to handle a sword, as Major William was, would have held the sword differently if he intended to harm. So, to summarise, Captain Bush provides multiple new defence arguments, as well as ones we already know. That one, Private Gregory was drunk. He emphasises this. He says that he himself knows he saw the man, and Private was definitely drunk. The horse moved, and this is what caused Private Gregory to fall onto the sword. Now we have more further confirmation that the horse definitely moved. As far as the Major William Gordon was aware, the sword should not have been as sharp as it was. Therefore, it should not have been able to have stabbed Private Gregory and killed him. And Major Gordon did not strike Private Gregory at an angle that a trained soldier in swordsmanship would have struck if they had an intention to harm or kill. This witness statement in particular, out of everyone, changes the game. He provides so much detail. His statement is actually very long in the court transcripts as well. And he provides two fresh new arguments that say there's no way William did this on purpose. What do you think about that?
I think it adds a lot more credence to the claims defending the Major, because one of my main hang-ups before was the argument of him falling onto the sword, and that's being so sharp, to go through the thick uniform and to actually kill someone. But it makes sense if it was sharpened the day before, that it would actually be able to do that.
Yeah. It feels, I always, that falling onto the sword had felt like I didn't punch the guy, he fell into my fist kind of argument. So, but if the horse is moving, and as she said here, the sword is really sharp. Private Gregory was not meant to have this sword on him at the time. He shouldn't have had it on him. And I don't know why he did, and that's an issue that isn't raised why he did in the court trial. But you're right, it's more reasonable. We can see how it's possible, at least, to happen. Interestingly as well, I think this is a bit of evidence in the trial to show that the court is treating people of higher rank better. So when asked to describe how Major William was pointing his sword at Private Gregory, all other witnesses are asked to describe this as well. But they're asked to just use their hand and their arm to show how was Major William holding his arm. Captain Bush is the only witness so far where the recorder actually asked for a sword to be brought into the courtroom to demonstrate how Major William struck out with the sword. So he is given an object, he's given a sword so he can demonstrate properly. Maybe this is to do with the fact that Captain Bush will know how a major should point because he is of higher rank as well. But I don't know. I feel like that just feels to me like, why is he given an object to demonstrate this and everyone else has to just raise their hand up? Another witness later on actually supports Bush's remarks about the sharpness of the sword used. In response to being asked whether he believed there was any resistance to the sword going into Private Gregory's body, a witness called Snowden said that if the sword was not as extremely sharp as it had been, it would not have been able to have pierced through. As we know, witnesses cannot hear other witnesses' statements, so this supports Captain Bush.
The only hang-up I have with it is the fact that they've been friends for such a long time. And as can be seen by looking at many other court cases from this period, usually a lot more leeway is given to people who are higher up in society. And I think, especially with the knowledge of that, if Captain Bush did lie, he would have had the backup of knowing that it's worked before. because the court systems were not equal at the time.
That's true. It's a good point. We have to remember the context of the time that this is happening. This is 1814. So you got a very, very good point there, Bertie. Remember this. Pinch of salt, everyone. Think of a pinch of salt. The last witness statement that I want to highlight before we get to the defense is from Corporal William Ramsden. Now, in the story told by other witnesses, when Private Gregory came up to William Gordon, he had come up to him because another corporal had taken him to Private William Gordon, and he had told Private William Gordon that he was drunk. During the story as well, one thing I didn't highlight before, when William Gordon pointed the sword at Private Gregory, he had first asked the corporal who was with Gregory for his sword. Now, this is Corporal William Ramsden. And when William asked him for his sword, and this is supported by multiple witness statements, the corporal didn't have his sword on him. And so it's for that reason that William ended up taking Gregory's sword from him and used his own sword, which was extra sharp. Kind of puts in context, if the corporal had his own sword on him, which he should have done, the sword would not have been sharp enough to have stabbed him. Now, okay, Corporal William Ramsden does give an alternative view though, and he was next to William and Gregory when it happened. Ramsden says that Major Gordon didn't point the sword at him. He says that William never pointed the sword at Gregory. What he did instead was that he was holding the sword. He had hit the horse with the sword, so he's still holding Gregory's sword. He threw up his hands to keep the horse from him, to protect himself from the 4 feet of the horse. And it's when he raised his hands with the sword that Gregory went into the sword. But he is the only one that says this. But he was also right next to them when it happened.
This is a very major departure, and it's so interesting because this is witness from someone who's again quite high up, and this is such a major departure because everyone else has said that it was all a very precise move with the sword, and it was all a complete accident. Well, this it really lines up a rather more like a more just distressed view. He was scared of the horse coming up to him and raised his hands.
That's true,
in protection, and then it's like sort of stabbed him on the way up. It really makes you think, like, what is everyone saying is actually adding up here?
Yeah, there's somebody's not telling the truth. So it's either a case of everyone else is putting more credit, maybe, to William, or they're blatantly lying to protect the major. Or maybe I was thinking this corporal here, he was next to them when it happened, because he doesn't know what other witnesses are saying at this point. Maybe he's thinking, if I say the major pointed deliberately at the private, that puts more guilt in his name. So maybe he's lying, but then maybe he is the only one telling the truth.
I've had this brewing in the back of my head where you've been talking, especially considering that the major did not have a sword on him as he should. He seems like a real stickler for tradition with showing his authority by having a sword but just grabbing someone else's.
That's a good point. I never questioned why the major didn't have a sword on him. So he didn't have a sword on him. The corporal didn't have a sword on him. The private was the only one who had a sword on him when they all should have had swords on them. And
that sort of raises it a bit because, like, was it a slip of the mind, not realizing that a private would actually have an actual weapon on them rather than the parade weapon that the higher ranks have?
Sharpened sword, yeah. Oh, this is a very interesting point. Okay, keep this in mind. We're about to go into the defence now. Major William Gordon's own defence statement. So I think bear this in mind. So that's all the prosecution witnesses called up to give their statements. At least I have shared what I believe to be the most significant part of these witness statements. If I shared every witness statement, as I said, there are so many, this episode would be hours and hours long, which means that recording this for Bertie and I would be even longer because we make so many mistakes. I make so many mistakes when recording this. The actual recording is a lot longer than the episode. Like I say, our editor and museum manager Millie does magic to these episodes. Thank you, Millie. Anyways, I think we should get back to the trial. So, Major William Gordon has his defence coming up, but he himself never says his defence. He gives the power to General Crawford to take the stand and say his defence for him. It's said that Major William doesn't feel like he can say it himself. It's reported in newspapers that when given his defence, Crawford delivered this with great feeling and effect. And I can tell you from a little spoiler alert later on, when Crawford himself is called to give his own witness statement, this man speaks beautifully. His descriptions are long. He's how he speaks for Major Gordon is the words he used. He was definitely the right man for telling Major Gordon's defense statement, for sure. Right. Major William Gordon's defense. It's a very passionate defense. He wants a full acquittal, and he's pleading directly to the jury through General Crawford. He gets quite emotional. He uses emotional terms for this. Like I said, he's definitely the right man for stating this. He states to the jury that some of, quote, malicious persons among the witnesses have stated false allegations and attempts against him. Now, this we definitely know is he referring to John Halford here, when John Halford was saying, nope, he did it on purpose. Or potentially Corporal Ramsden, thinking maybe he was helping, said that he was flustered. William Gordon does get to see the witnesses during this, so he knows what people have said. So he directly calls on these witnesses as malicious persons. He says that after the incident occurred, people in the barracks were speaking bad about him as well. For example, and this is a quote, people in the barracks were taking others to the spot in which Private Gregory died, which was marked by the deceased's blood with a view to increase prejudice against me. Absolutely. So William Gordon's story of what incident is that he drew his sword with full intention of, I think it's best if we use the actual words William Gordon here used. When describing his account of the incident, William Gordon, through General Crawford, says, I drew the sword with the full intention of giving it to him, Corporal Ramsden, and at the same time ordered the deceased to go forward. I extended my arm with the intention of placing the flat part of the sword after my arm was so extended against the deceased's back by way of urging him forward. The deceased, quite suddenly and unexpectedly to me, forced his horse rapidly and considerably to the left towards me. This is what Major Gordon is saying caused the tip of the sword to go into Private Gregory. Major Gordon comments that the sword, unknown to him at the time, was extra sharp and considerably reduced at the point. So, to summarize, according to him, he intended to hit the flat bit of the sword against Private Gregory, and the sword tip in particular was particularly sharp. So when Private Gregory himself moved the horse forward and leant towards William, the tip went into his back, completely on accident. William Gordon points out in his words, if the sword in question had been in the ordinary state of dragoons' swords at the time, there would have been no danger of accident to the deceased, as the point could not have entered his body. The sudden motion of the horse was observed generally, and if the horse had retained its original position, I should have been able, with greater safety, to place the flat part of the sword against the deceased's back, as it was my intention to do so. It's very clear here that the horse moved and the sword was extra sharp, and this is the cause of the death. And I have to say, when doing my research, I believed him. I considered, with all the other contexts of his higher rank, of the few contradictory statements here, I did believe him. Maybe it was to do with General Crawford's. I will admit, I'm falling a little bit in love with General Crawford's performance skills, because maybe it's to do with how he presented it, but I did believe him. I truly believe he's innocent of the murder. However, he caused the death. Accident or not, he was the man who caused the death. So, whilst I believe he didn't intend to doing it, the discrepancies over how the horse moved and whether it was William who moved the horse or Gregory who moved the horse, or whether the horse is moved by itself, and also the fact that the sword was sharper than it should have been, and this is supported by multiple people, I don't think it's as important, really. I think the question still is, the man is dead, and if you hadn't done this, the man would be alive. Which brings about, at the moment the charge is murder, at the moment, that's a spoiler alert, that phrase there, but the moment the charge is murder, and I believe that, well, could this be manslaughter instead?
Honestly, while I do really mostly agree with you on this, the only hang-up I have is the fact that to hit him on the back with the flat side of the sword, they'd have to be quite close. And I just don't see, if the sword did go into his back or side, the location seems to change on half the accounts. Surely it'd have to be so close that by him moving the horse, it couldn't put the end into the private. I don't know.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it depends how quickly everything happened at once.
Yeah, I just struggle to see the logistics of it.
Okay. I like that. Fair. Well, after the defense, we go into defense witnesses. And the defense witnesses, there's many of them, and they are all very supportive of William Gordon. They give less so a description of the offence that happened, because we have this from the prosecution witnesses, and more so a description of who William Gordon was as a major and before this, and to get an idea of, was this man, did he often go in rage and furies? Because the issue here is that a private came up to him and the private was drunk and he wouldn't move on, and William decided that he's pointed his sword at him as an act of discipline. This is a man who would stab other people. He wave his sword about viciously before. This is what the court wants to know. However, the witness statements before him for defense speak of him so highly. I've picked out a few quotes here from multiple different witnesses, and these are multiple people, again, who do not hear what other witnesses say. And just so give you an understanding, Bertie, here's 3 quotes for you. One is describing William. He said, as a major, he is particularly the soldier's friend. Second quote from another witness I want to point out is, he could not be provoked to injure a reptile, much less a fellow creature. And thirdly, I want to say, when asked, how would you describe the character of Major William Gordon? Another witness said, the best character that I could possibly express. These are high remarks, which to me is interesting why I would not injure a reptile. Now, I don't know that. I know not injure a fly. I don't know about the phrase not injure a reptile.
I don't know, maybe reptiles are seen as less. Because especially in this country, you've only really got snakes and they freak most people out. So I think maybe more leaning on that, maybe.
Oh, that makes more sense now, actually. Yeah, I wouldn't even injure a snake. So these are just high praises. Another defense witness called John Stokes is called. Now, he is called specifically because he's a shopkeeper. John Stokes is called from defense and specifically as a witness, as a shopkeeper, because it's his shop in which the previous prosecution witness, John Halford, had gone into his shop and apparently said that he would do everything in his power to hang the major. I mentioned before, when he read out William Gordon's witness statement, that General Crawford is called to give his own witness statement, and it's beautiful. I want someone to describe me the way that General Crawford describes William Gordon. This man has so much love and admiration for him. I'm going to read a quote here. He gives a really, really long speech about who William Gordon is, talking about his years that they've been together. He sees him as a really respectable major. He listens to his soldiers in his command, and he's calm. He's passionate about his job, but he is calm in his demeanour. Now he ends this beautiful account of Major Gordon. Upon my solemn and most sacred oath taken in the presence of Almighty God, before whom I am standing, I do declare that I would pledge my existence. Nay, my existence, that is nothing. I would pledge what is 10 million times more valuable, and must so be held by every well-thinking being, my humble hopes of happiness in the next world. It is not impossibility that Major Gordon should commit, under any circumstances or in any situation, an intentional injury against any creature living.
I praise.
He's saying, I'm pledging not my life. He's saying, I want to pledge my life. Actually, no, that's not enough. 10 million times more than that. The happiness in my afterlife, eternity. This man would never hurt anyone.
I don't really think you can ask for more glowing approval. He's really on his side here.
He really is. And it's interesting that the recorder in the court transcripts, they write, he's like ums and ahs, he's nay, no, huh. He emphasizes his performance. So that is the witnesses. That is the defense and the prosecution. We have heard everything. We've heard the story, the few different takes on it. You've heard everything, Bertie. What are you thinking? If you were jury right now, you're not landowning, but you are a man, so you're halfway there. If you were jury, what would you be discussing in the jury room with your fellow jurors?
Even though the arguments against the major are quite compelling, I think one thing that hasn't come across, because we had to summarize what all the witnesses were saying, the sheer number of them who gave the exact same story that does not put the major at fault. I think it'd be rather difficult to actually say that it was purposeful, because we went over it was like 34 who
34.
gave pretty much the exact same story saying it was an accident. I think it's rather difficult to argue against that.
Yeah, and what I didn't mention is that these 34 witnesses as well, they'll kind of see what happening from all different angles. Because the scene happens in the barracks, but from what I understand from the court transcripts is that there are shops around the barracks where it's happening, and these men are looking out the shop, or they're on the road, or they're next to it, and we are getting multiple angles here. And like you said, it is practically the same story, minus a difference here and there. So it is compelling. I think that is definitely, when researching this, what made me truly believe that he did it. Also the fact that at no point no one's denying that, yes, he stabbed him. It was Major Gordon's sword that went into Gregory. And you can't deny that. There's too many witnesses. So I have to agree. Again, you can definitely tell that I am really biased by my love for General Crawford. So I'm glad that you're here to give a more objective viewpoint.
Also, I'd like to say, even though it is awfully convenient that the one person who speaks against him, he's been shown to have a vendetta against the Major, even though how awfully convenient that is, it is rather compelling that he might not be telling the whole truth here, no matter how perfectly curated by others that may have been.
Yeah, especially as well, according to William Gordon himself, that there were people going up to the scene of the crime and being like, "Oh, look what this guy did. He did it here." So there's people gossiping, and this guy sounds like one of those gossips, maybe with a fided. Now, I'm about to go into what the jury said. What do you think they're going to say?
I think they're probably going to lean towards manslaughter, because there's no question that it wasn't the Major who actually did it. But I think due to the sheer number of witnesses and the absolute glowing adoration of the main defence,
absolutely glowing.
I don't see how they could do a verdict outside of manslaughter here.
Well, everyone at home, I'm probably assuming you're thinking the same, but you gotta let us know. Pause the episode, send us a comment, if you're on a Discord server, get our comments in there. Email us at loaves2legends@gmail.com. I want to know what your thoughts are, or contact us on social media. So I'm about to get into it. Okay, so you think the jury are likely going to go to manslaughter? Yeah. Well, before we even get to that point, so the recorder is at this point leading the trial. They themselves suggest and recommend to the jury that they go for a verdict of manslaughter. And it's pointed out that the recorder or the judge don't usually do this. They don't have to give a recommendation to the jury, but they point out in the transcript that they feel so compelled by the witnesses' accounts given that they feel that they have to give this recommendation that it's not going to be murder, you should do manslaughter instead. Jury come back guilty of manslaughter, as predicted. So it stated that Private Gregory died as a cause of an incautious use of the sword. It is this quote exactly which has caused the recorder to say he thinks that Major William Gordon would be innocent. He would be innocent of all crime if it wasn't for the incautious use of the sword. He believes it's on that point only that he cannot deny the manslaughter, which is why he recommended the verdict of manslaughter to the jury. So everything else, the horse and all that, it wouldn't have been his point. If he didn't point the swords at him, the man wouldn't have died. Therefore, Major William Gordon is guilty of manslaughter, given the sentence. Now, 1814, trial of a major, manslaughter for a private. What do you think the sentence would be?
Hate to be a nihilist. I don't think it's going to be that severe. To be perfectly honest, I'd be surprised if he goes to prison. Probably something like a fine or something. I'd be surprised if it was more than that.
Well, Major William Gordon was sentenced to a fine of £50, which, and it is remarked in the court transcripts, he paid in full before he even left the courtroom.
Oh, I'd love to say I'm shocked. I really am.
I know. There is definitely here, you cannot deny it, just inequality here to ranks and just social hierarchies in the army.
The fact that he paid it in full before he even left, he probably had the cash on hand. Like, he was ready.
The fact that, yeah, and it's recorded in the transcripts. That's put down. I feel like there wasn't a need to go, yeah, he's paid it.
I like to imagine the moment the verdict's given, he just puts his hand in his pocket, just walks up to the judge, puts a wad of cash on the table and walks out.
Yeah. That's it. Like, okay, cool. That's my afternoon done. Right, get back to my normal life. It is, yeah, it's that part that shocked me. £50 done. Right, so that is the trial. That is the trial of Major William Gordon. He has caused the manslaughter of a man and just he does anything, paid it off. What do you think of that, Bertie? The whole thing?
I think it really does show a double standard. It's such an interesting case with the fact that the entire trial was over intent. That is so rare to see, especially from murder cases from this point. Because usually, like, considering how there wasn't CCTV, it was all eyewitnesses. It'd be very easy in most cases to say, oh no, that wasn't me, that was some other guy also wearing a long coat or something. But considering that everyone knew it was him, so many eyewitnesses all saying the exact same story except for a couple. It's really curious. Especially also it makes you wonder about the past, because showing how one person has such an obvious vendetta against the man.
Yeah, an obvious vendetta against a man that everyone else is saying, oh, he's amazing.
The fact that someone's saying, I lay down my life for him. And then this one person just seething in the background. It's like, what's happened here?
It's a very good point. I wonder what happened. So, listeners, let us know what you think as well. And as it is the end of our episode, it is time for our question of the week. At the end of every episode, I ask our guests to ask one question to all you listeners at home. If you want to answer and chat with others, then click the link in the description to join our Discord and get involved. So, Bertie, final moment here to put you on the spot. Do you have a question of the week for us?
My question is going to be, how would the verdict have changed if the roles were reversed in this scenario?
Oh, that is a good one. Let's discuss this amongst ourselves quickly to give an idea. I think it would be completely different.
I agree with you, because even though the question sort of dampened by the fact, why would a private be telling his major to go along? But even just ignoring that, I feel if it was all completely the same, all the reasons were the same, it was just the private had killed the major, I think it would have been so different.
Do you think the witness statements would be different? In this scenario, are we going, the witness statements are the same, or do you think there'll be more people going up against?
I feel like this is my personal biases talking here. I think from the normal people, it would have been the same, especially because they wouldn't have heard each other say what they saw. But I don't think he would have gotten the glowing praise from the other members of high society.
General Crawford would not have given that amazing speech to a private. No,
I don't think so.
I think that's very good. I completely agree. Well, listeners, let us know what you think as well. And this would be an interesting discussion, I think, to get involved in the Discord server. So I'm going to be in there talking to you guys as well, because I want to know too. Well, thank you, Bertie, for joining us in this trial in our very own courtroom of our museum. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it. Also, please remember, if you can, please come to the museum. It's very interesting. And you can see the courtroom where this all went down.
Bertie, you're doing amazing wonders for marketing. Yes, do exactly what Bertie says. You have to listen to him. It's the rules. Right. Thank you, Bertie. We just wanted to give a quick reminder to email us any feedback, comments, or interesting facts that you know or discover in relation to the topics discussed in today's episode. Just email us at loavestollegends@gmail.com. Or you can join our Discord server and be a part of our online Loaves to Legends community. The email and Discord link will be in the episode description, as well as on our website, sandwichguildhallmuseum.co.uk. With every episode, we'll be asking a question of the week on our Discord server. This week's question is, how would the verdict have changed if the roles were reversed in this scenario? Join our Discord and have a discussion with us and other listeners and find out what our answers are at the Loaves to Legends team. But for now, goodbye from us, Gia and Bertie. We have been Loaves to Legends, the history-based podcast from Sandwich Guildhall Museum. Thank you for listening, and we'll speak again soon. Loaves to Legends is produced by Sandwich Guildhall Museum. Millie and Gia are the executive producers. Today's episode was researched and written by Gia and edited by Millie. Gia and Bertie were your hosts today. Special thanks to Ian Pittaway for permission to use his translation of the music and to Kat Batchelor for performing it. Finally, thank you to Beth Stone for the episode artwork.